How many millions of workers in this country are not working for a living wage? There are 47 million American workers who go to work every day, longer and longer commutes, who have to pay more and more to get to work, another car, another insurance policy, another repair bill, more daycare expenses, and they're making under 10 bucks an hour. 10 million of them making $5.15 an hour, the federal minimum wage. Listen to this one. The federal minimum wage is $2.15 in real purchasing power, less than what it was in 1968, when the economy was half of what it is today in GDP output per capita. I submit if the economy doubles in GDP output, it's because of the American workers, and that minimum wage should be double. Should be double. Since 1968, the prices have been going up. Since 1968, the boss's compensation has been going up. But since 1968, the federal minimum wage, which if it was the same in purchasing power would be $7.30 today per hour, is $5.15. And you know what Al Gore wants? Al Gore says he wants to raise it $1 over the next 2 years. But you know what Al Gore didn't do this month? He didn't answer my letter inviting him and Bush to join together in opposing the latest $4,000 per year congressional pay raise for members of Congress. They somehow can't get around to raising the minimum wage. Just think of this. We have the most restrictive anti-labor union laws in the Western world. It is harder to form a union in the private sector than in any other Western country. In fact, less than 10% of the workers now in the private economy are unionized, the lowest in 60 years, and it shows. It shows because the majority of American workers are falling behind in a period of unprecedented economic growth that is accruing to the top 10%, spectacularly to the top 5% richest, and really crazy-like for the top 1%, whose net wealth is equal to the combined net wealth of the bottom 95% of all American earners. Imagine. But here's one for you. And what this tells you is that for some, this is a great land of opportunity, like Bill Gates. But Bill Gates' net worth in January of this year was equivalent to the combined total net worth of the poorest 120 million Americans, made up of millions of workers who don't have that opportunity, who work decade after decade and they're dead broke. They're dead broke, working from paycheck to paycheck, or if they're poor, from payday loan to payday loan, in the horrible exploitation by the loan sharks and by predatory lenders funded by Wall Street firms right here in New York City. So when they tell you what a great economy it is, you're entitled to ask, for who? For who is it a great economy? For people, 2, 3 members of the family, commuting, rushing around frantically, exhausted every day, choked by bumper-to-bumper traffic, wondering who's going to pay for a grandparent's illness, who's going to be able to buy the goods, who is going to figure out the bills that nobody can figure out because they're written in code, and not surprisingly rip off people in the hundreds of billions of dollars a year, like in the healthcare industry. And then there's less time for family, for children, for community, for civic pursuits, for the creative impulse of our people. Who designed this economy anyway? I think it's time to have it designed as if people matter, not as if General Motors, Exxon, DuPont, or the other corporations matter. Clinton, Gore, and the Republicans have made sure that these giant agribusiness companies are squeezing the price, livelihood out of these farmers who are growing wheat, corn, soybeans, and other products. 30–40% lower in prices than it was in 1996. And that's not accruing to us. as consumers. It's accruing to build up record-setting profits and executive compensation of the Cargills, the ADMs, the Smithfield Farms, the IBPs, the giant hog farms, and the giant cattle farms that are turning our entire farm economy into peonage, into industrial factory agriculture, laced by increasing encroachments of genetic engineering and all its mischief. The Green Party stands for the preservation of the small farm economy in this country and the rural life that it graces. And look, which workers in this country are paid the least, treated the worst, and damaged the most? It's the workers who harvest our food, including the migrant workers, including the immigrant workers, who are not given the rights under our Fair Labor Standards Act. Whenever they tell you there's not enough money for legal services for the poor, not enough money for prosecutors against corporate crime, when they say there's not enough money for universal health care, when they say there's not enough money for daycare, you just say, how come there are hundreds of billions of our hard-earned tax dollars going to corporate subsidies, handouts, giveaways, and bailouts of corporations? The Green Party says, get them off welfare once and for all. Isn't it time for our foreign policy to stop siding and propping up and arming dictatorships and oligarchs 10 years after the end of the Soviet Union and begin to stand tall for the workers and the peasants in this world of ours? Isn't it about time that America stood for the people who are struggling for justice around the world, stood for abolishing infectious diseases with our research and development like tuberculosis and malaria, stood for environmental preservation all over the world? We need to redefine national security as if the 6 billion people in this world matter, not corporate weapons producers. You know, it's truly amazing how arrogant the IMF and World Bank are. They really think they have the models for economic development in these countries. Let me tell you who have the models. I'll tell you who have the models. It's people like the Brazilian educator, Paulo Freire, who taught illiterate Brazilian peasants how to read and how to write in a way that could be taught all over the world to abolish illiteracy. It's people like the late Egyptian architect Hassan Fathi, who was a great people's architect who taught Egyptian peasants how to build elegant small homes right out of the soil underneath their feet. It's people like those who started the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh for microcredit for women to start their own businesses for $200, $100. Maybe if we started talking about citizen globalization, civic globalization, instead of corporate globalization, the world will move forward.